Okay, by now you should have the four measures of center. I did change this to percent in poverty too because these are based on your calculated values. And notice that if I were to change one of these values, all of these values should change. Let me change it to an absurdly high number and watch what happens. Notice that the median and the trimmed mean remain calm. They pretty much remain what they were, whereas the actual mean, the arithmetic mean, and the weighted mean both jump up. This is because these two measures, these two statistics are what we call um, resistant statistics. In other words, they can resist these extreme outliers very nicely. They're very stable. Whereas the average and the weighted mean cannot do that. So if you do have data, if you ever have data that has some extreme outliers in it, um, it is worth thinking about using a measure that's resistant to those outliers, such as the median or the mean. I'm going to do Control Z here, go back to the actual data. Okay, what you need to do now is insert a visual. So we're going to click on the column, your calculated column there, percent column, and we'll insert a chart. This time we're going to insert a histogram, and if you don't see it as one of the suggested ones, you can scroll down and you'll find it down here. Okay, and then you want to click on chart and axis title. The chart title, for me, it would be poverty level of Ohio counties. Obviously, for you, that might be different. Certainly, if you're not using Ohio, it should not say Ohio there. Um, and then I also want to do the horizontal axis title. So along the bottom, this is percent of county in, maybe it's more descriptive, below poverty line. And then on the vertical axis title, I want to say number of counties. And this will help interpret what's going on in the graph too. So for example, this bar right here, which is almost at 30, it's maybe 20, 28, that tells us that 28 of Ohio's counties have poverty rates between 12% and 16%. And I'm curious, if I click on this now and change that format to a percent, okay, yeah, it Google Sheets sees these decimals and the percents as the same, so it doesn't change that. But this gives us a nice visual on what's going on. It also allows us to see if there's outliers. So we do see that there's two counties here. If we hover over it, it says count one. So there's two poverties that two counties that have pretty high poverty levels in Ohio, and I happen to know what they were because I've been in them before. If I want to see that, um, I could click on percent poverty and do a search, Z to A. Uh, Athens County and Scioto County are the two counties there that have the highest. And if we really look, that Scioto County is just a little bit above these. Athens County itself is much higher than all the rest of the data. It's certainly an outlier. I'm gonna go backwards here because I kind of messed these up when I did that search. But um, although it's interesting because Athens County has a huge university, Ohio University, which is where I attended grad school, and I'm fairly confident that they are including the college students in that. So it gets into some of the reasons you have to be careful at looking at the data and wondering how exactly that data is being tabulated, because yes, college students aren't making a lot of money. Do we want to count them as living below the poverty line? Um, Maybe or maybe not. It's certainly a different type of poverty than what we're seeing in other places. So that's the visual there. So let's now revisit our four measures of center. Notice that all of them are about at 14%, and 14% is right in between 12 and 16%. So they all line up pretty closely here in the middle. In symmetric data, in data sets that the left side looks the same as the right side, it's kind of like a mirror image of itself, you'll see this, that the mean and the median are very similar. In skewed data, which is data where one of the tails is really long in one direction but not the other, you'll see that the median kind of sticks with the actual center of the data because it's where you're above 50% of the data, you're below 50% of the data. It's always the halfway point. Whereas the mean will get pulled up into that tail. So if you do have a long skew in one direction, the mean gets pulled towards that skew. Now, if you trim off a good portion of the data, that shouldn't happen so much. So the trimmed mean and the median will often continue to stay fairly close together. In this case, the mean, overall mean, stayed close because it was symmetric data. If you don't have symmetric data, the median tends to be, again, I would tend to go more with the trimmed mean or the median if I wanted the average poverty level of a county. So what's the weighted mean good for? Well, really, of all the information there, of those four measures of center, I would probably prefer that above anything else because it tells me what the overall population poverty rate in Ohio is. If I would add up the total number in poverty, so I can see it's about 1.6 million here, and then I would add up the total population of Ohio, which is about 11.3 million, and I would divide those two numbers. The weighted mean is what I would get. So the weighted mean adjusts for the size of the county instead of putting all 88 counties at exactly the same level, which is what these other three indicators do. So there's really pros and cons of each measure of center. Now, one final thing I'm going to have you do is let's do a conditional formatting. So I'm going to get rid of that a little bit there. Conditional formatting on percent of poverty. So or whatever your calculated column is, you're going to click on that, click on Format, Conditional Formatting, and color scale. Your minimum value should be, let's put it as red. The maximum value, let's put that as blue. Click done. So this way we can see that actually that's probably not the right choice, is it? For me, I want the minimum thing is actually a good thing here. Maybe I'll do this color blue. And the maximum is a bad thing because it means higher poverty. That looks more like the message that we're uncovering here. So here we can just scroll down and kind of see anytime, oh, there's a very reddish one, Scioto County must have a lot of poverty. We click on Vinton County. Now that is legitimate poverty. I've been to Vinton County. There was a special done on some of the schools in Vinton County and the poverty there. What I want you to do then is highlight a particular county that you have some kind of association with. For me, I was born in Logan County, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the number beside the county and highlight that green. So I can see where my county fits in. 13.4% was just below the median level of poverty and a few steps below the average poverty in Ohio.